You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
.635, welcome back on this Wednesday morning, May 21st, live from Lake Wissota. I'm Pat Kreitlow here on the Civic Media Radio Network. As you know, when the show was expanded to 3 hours a couple of weeks back, that gave us the opportunity to add some more regular guests. Some you'll still hear at 6:30, some at 7:30, now some at 8:30. And a few at 8:30, we sometimes go a little long and tape a little bit extra and are able to share it with you at 6:30 the next morning. That is the case with Dan Shafer, the political editor at Civic Media, and, of course, the creator of the Recombobulation Area, which is now, a 19-time Milwaukee Press Club award-winning news site. And along with all of his other work, Dan continues to write columns for his area and for Civic Media, the most recent of which is a new column about the state legislators to keep an eye on for the rest of this session in lieu of what are going to be some big elections next year. I know every election's big. These are going to be big elections next year. Could flip control of the state legislature. So I asked Dan a little bit more about the focus of this new column.
We have a real chance at accountability now that we have new maps. And so these are the legislators in the most closely contested districts. These are the ones that are most vulnerable to having the voters boot them out of office next year. You know, we all know that we're going to be paying attention to, folks like Robin Voss and the Assembly Speaker, Devin LeMahieu, the Majority Leader in the Senate, and, certain other legislative leaders who are, key on certain committees. But I think as we look ahead to 2026, which I guess we are doing just to a certain extent today with some of these announcements with Chris Taylor, with Randy Bryce, also, just kind of an eye on 2026, because especially for the state Senate, there are only half of the state Senate has been on the ballot under new maps. And so there are 3 Republican state senators serving in districts that were won by Kamala Harris last year. Howard Markline, Rob Hutton, and Van Wangard. So those 3, if Democrats were to win those 3 districts, and again, those are districts won by Kamala Harris just last fall, then they would be able to flip the state Senate. And that would really change a whole lot about our politics. So I think it is important for us to watch what's happening with those 3 senators in particular, but also, the rest of the list here of the 23. I've got both Democrats and Republicans on here that are in closely competitive districts. And particularly on the Democratic side, as I look through, the Assembly representatives who won some of these closer races last year, a lot of them are in their first term, right? You don't know exactly how things are going to play out in a legislator's first term. So I think, for those who maybe I was on the edge of including in the list, if it was their first term, I put them on the list because you never know what type of approach somebody might bring to the office. And so I think this is just a reminder to people that we have an avenue for accountability. If a lot of people were really upset about the Republican-controlled state legislature's Joint Finance Committee voting 600 plus items out of Tony Evers' budget on critical things like childcare and healthcare, education, up and down the list. And so I think a lot of people are upset about that and wondering what they can do to hold certain legislators accountable. Well, I think, this is the first, or, the list of legislators who are in those most closely competitive districts who will have to defend the votes that they make now and in the next 2 months in the budget. And as, so many different bills make their way through the legislature, and to keep an eye on what's going to happen in the years ahead, because we as the voters can bring actual accountability in ways we could not when we were stuck under the gerrymander.
Well, you've got rookies and veterans over here in the Chippewa Valley, for example. You have Jody Emerson, who's a Democrat from Eau Claire, but her district is no longer just the city of Eau Claire, so it's not as safe as it used to be. You have Christian Phelps from Eau Claire, a brand new Democrat who could be a real up-and-comer, but only if he can defend his seat in 2026. And then you have State Senator Jeff Smith, who has a lot of experience in the Capitol, but in a district that is notoriously purple, and where I feel like he's really mastered, and I know he's a friend of mine as I say this, but he's really mastered the retail politics of it. But it's a district that still very much could go depending on, external factors out of Jeff Smith's control. So just in that one area alone, you can see how competitive districts have made it by, as we've always been saying, not a lock that Democrats get an advantage, but more so than under gerrymandered maps.
Yeah, and Smith is a really interesting case too. He won re-election in 2022, and in 2024, Kamala Harris won the seat, but only by 2 points, right? So this is a close. If voters don't like what the Democrats are doing in the process, here's an opportunity for accountability there as well. And so and I think just the list more broadly really highlights a lot of what are so often the swing areas of the state. You have, your neck of the woods in the Chippewa Valley and the Eau Claire area is always going to be part of that. Western Wisconsin, there are many districts in Western Wisconsin on this list. La Crosse area, Fox Valley always emerges as a really important swing region. The Milwaukee area suburbs, there are a number of districts there. Again, I mentioned, Rob Hutton before. I think his might be the most interesting for next year on the map, because, this is a seat that Kamala Harris won by 6 points in the western suburbs in a rapidly shifting part of the area. And I've noticed that Hutton has posted a couple photos on his social media feeds with Tony Evers. So, would that be happening? Was in a deep red safe district? I don't know.
No chance. Very quickly, state Republicans had their convention, including the WisPolitics straw poll. What did you glean from that?
Fascinating straw poll. I thought, the fact that Josh Schoeman and Tom Tiffany were the kind of the top two vote getters on there. Boy, that is not a deep bench for the Republicans. We actually had a piece on Josh Schoeman at the recombobulation area that we published yesterday from a guest contributor named Jordan Morales, taking a look at some of his record in 2022, not being able to get a police funding referendum passed in one of the reddest counties in Wisconsin, and now Josh Schoeman on that record is trying to run for governor.
There he is, Dan Shafer, giving us his latest on whether the Washington County executive can run on that record, or will he face somebody like Congressman Tom Tiffany instead in a Republican primary for governor next year. And of course, the big question as well is, what about Governor Tony Evers? Is he going to run for a third term or not? So again, you can follow Dan at the recombobulation area, and of course, all across the Civic Media Radio Network and at civicmedia.us. All right, one of the stories that happened while I was away, and just wasn't sure I wanted to get into things right away, so that's why we're talking about it today, deals with the congressman from Western Wisconsin, Derrick Van Orden, a former Navy SEAL. The guy who said he was going to be an independent voice. You hear that all the time. I'm going to be an independent voice. And he was going to be it for veterans and stand up against budget cuts. We have heard him quite literally yelling, almost screaming at people, that the cuts that are being planned for the VA, the cuts that are being planned for SNAP, nutritional assistance, that these things aren't going to hurt real people, that it's only going to be cutting the waste. It just seems that after stiff-arming constituents and refusing to hold town halls, the only voice he's listening to is the guy in the White House, the one that wants to make massive cuts to the VA. So it wasn't a big surprise to hear Van Orden trot out the bureaucracy boogeyman in his latest promise that the VA cuts would be all about bureaucrats and not the quality of veterans' health care. Here's a quick clip of Derrick Van Orden. He was talking at the time to Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins, a former Republican congressman from Georgia and himself a U.S. Air Force veteran. What you're going to hear Van Orden talking about is a hand-drawn graph that he made that purports to show that the number of doctors has stayed steady, the number of bureaucrats has gone up. Again, this is a hand-drawn graph with his assertion of what's happening at the VA. Let's give a listen.
That's the whole VA. This is the problem with the VA. Okay? This is the increase in bureaucrats. These are the doctors. It's almost a flat line, and then we have an increase with the veterans because of the PAC Act, right? So when we are going to cut the VA, and I hope you do, sir, this is where you need to make the cut, right there, in this line, right there, sir. If, Mr. Secretary, if you cut this, then this line with the doctors and stuff, the people that are actually touching our veterans and providing care can go like this, right? And then we can match the increase with vets. So, Mr. Secretary, I'm incredibly happy and looking forward to working with you and your administration.
When you cut the VA, and I hope you do, Derrick Van Orden's words that you are going to hear on a loop, and he is going to lose his mind every time and say, that's not what I meant, that it was always about cutting the bureaucracy. The so-called bureaucracy we've been hearing all about since Elon Musk and Donald Trump showed up in D.C. in terms of just how radical this would be and how many people would be hurt when they say they're hurting bureaucrats. They're hurting people who may not have MD after their name, but very much play a role in making sure that the VA runs smoothly, that there is efficiency there, that veterans are seen in a timely manner there. You can't simply cut all of the support staff in something and expect that it will still run normally. Because what you're doing then is, and I'm taking a big leap here in hyperbole, but understand where I'm going here. We're not asking doctors to start scrubbing the toilets as well, okay? And when you think, well, I'm cutting this one janitorial position and I'm cutting this one assistant director position. Those positions were there for a reason, and they weren't there just because, George needs a job, so we're going to create a position, and then every VA hospital is going to have it. Government runs best with people who are engaged in the notion of public service. Government should be the people you should trust least are the people who hate government the most, who say, oh, it's all about waste, fraud, abuse, and bureaucrats, because they can never seem to produce it. Remember, Elon Musk's Doge thing was all about finding the waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste, fraud, and abuse can be against the law in this country, and yet I haven't seen anybody brought up on charges yet. Have you? Because that would be where you would prove the waste, where you would prove the fraud, where you would prove the abuse. And it seems to be lacking, which is why you see this kind of misdirection from somebody like Derrick Van Orden. Oh, by the way, speaking of misdirection, here's another way not to focus on Derrick Van Orden wanting to cut the VA and to cut veterans' health care, is to say ridiculous things like, let's get rid of the spring elections. That's something that Derrick Van Orden called for. It would require an amendment to the state constitution, but when he was asked recently about why Republicans didn't do well in the most recent spring elections, he said, Republicans don't vote, period. We just don't vote in spring elections, Van Orden said. According to a Wisconsin Public Radio story, I think they should get rid of that, he said, and fold it into a midterm or a 4-year cycle. There is exhaustion from the previous election, and it's just not functional. Well, Congressman, the reason we have it like that is that we have some positions that, believe it or not, are still supposed to be nonpartisan. And the nonpartisan elections are held in the spring, so that there's this clear delineation. And if anybody has messed up that line, might be you and your folks, but the answer is not getting rid of elections. Today's history lesson is next, as we always do, mornings across the Civic Media Radio Network, live from Lake Wissota. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
Welcome back. 7:35 now, live from Chippewa Falls. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Greg Bach is down in Radio Park, where earlier Greg and I were talking to Melissa Kaye from our Civic Media station in Wisconsin Rapids, and we learned from Melissa that she wants to get a pigeon, and all of the accoutrements associated with pigeon keeping. And on the text line, Matt from Germantown asks, is she going to use it to send notes to people?
Yeah.
And that is the challenge I think I would lay out for Melissa. Is this just for pet companionship, or is there going to be something utilitarian? Are we going to get some value out of this pigeon, besides a potential very small, dinner at some point if the pigeon
I want to make sure this
you.
pigeon is worth it. Send me messages. She also let us know about the whole pigeon culture, pigeon pants, pigeon mamas, pigeon cages, all the whole thing.
And
Who knew?
I just did not know if she. I just picture her back in Wisconsin Rapids right now, going, I can't believe they bought all this. I can't believe pigeon pants. Who does that? We did. We're into it. Hook, line, and sinker. We're totally invested. So, Matt in Germantown, good question. So again, add it to our list, Greg, of things to talk to Melissa about next week as we continue on Pigeon Watch, the Melissa Kaye edition.
2025.
All right. Let's turn to our homeroom segment now and talk to State Representative Christian Phelps from Eau Claire, a member of the Assembly Education Committee, and friends of the show will recall joining us quite frequently on behalf of the Wisconsin Public Education Network prior to his election to the Assembly. Representative Phelps, how are you?
I'm great. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here as well. You know what? Before we get into the education aspect of it, maybe your ears were burning, but Dan Shafer was mentioning you, and we were talking about his column about races to watch, legislators to watch from now through November of next year in the districts that were close in the presidential race and with new, less gerrymandered maps have led to more competitive races. And maybe Democrats have a chance to even take the majority in the legislature. And obviously you've been noticed right out of the gate, not just for the conditions of the district, but your work ethic and all the knowledge of education that you bring into this race. So I wanted to get your impression on being listed as one of those, races to watch already, whether like me, you become a one and done, a one term, thanks for serving, moving on. Or, if folks there think you've got legs and are going to be around for a little bit, kind of nice to be on a list of people getting a little extra attention, I think.
I guess so. I mean, we got plenty of attention last year because it was really the first chance mathematically that the 93rd had to flip in over 10 years, in 14 years, because of how gerrymandered it had been. And so people were already kind of watching and paying attention. And I had the privilege and luxury and exhaustion of having a competitive Democratic primary and then a competitive general election. So it was a very busy year, and it worked out. And I think our work is not done because, as I'm sure we'll discuss momentarily, we did not quite get the majority. We gained 10 seats in one swoop. That's pretty good, but there's a pretty hard limit on the amount of policy work you can get done when you work in the minority party in the legislature. And so, I think next year we will have some agenda items to really go back to the voters with and sell. And I think it's going to work out even better for us. But we have to keep the 93rd in our control in order to get that majority and actually get some things done, including investing in public schools, including rural public schools in the 93rd. So I look forward to talking to everybody about that.
Well, and you have a majority that is much thinner for Republicans and yet is still trying to create that illusion of full and total control, rather than seeing, perhaps more bipartisanship than some folks would have expected with more competitive districts, which takes us to the Assembly Education Committee, on which you serve. And certainly, I'm sure I framed the question similarly at the start of the session. And how did you think the Assembly Education Committee work would unfold? And I'm going to put it in those same terms again this time around. How much of what you're seeing put in front of you by majority Republicans on the Education Committee is substantive and directly related to improving, education quality in our classrooms versus what I would call sideshows, but other people just might say, issues that aren't as relevant to the direct education of our kids. How would your 30,000-foot view of the committee look so far?
Oh, yeah, it's a busy one, and so we've gotten plenty of content in the first four and a half months here, and it is not substantive. That's my observation. the luxury of being a new person in the legislature is that I can kind of walk around the Capitol with a flashlight and go into nooks and crannies and say, on behalf of the people of Wisconsin, why doesn't anything good ever happen around here? Like, what's going on? And a big part of it is just the agenda setting. So there are proposals introduced that would be substantive, that would help make it easier for kids to learn and teachers to teach in Wisconsin, and here in the 93rd. And then what happens is that the majority decides what moves forward and what doesn't. So, for example, on the Education Committee, we have 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats, which does not reflect the nearly 50-50 legislature. So ungerrymander the maps, gerrymander the committees to maintain your control. And so it was always kind of an open question: is there going to be more bipartisanship with the closer assembly makeup, or are they going to kind of behave exactly the same ways they did when they had that manufactured one-party rule? So far, they're doing the latter. And so on that committee, we've gotten several full days of bills to hear and then debate and then release, and then they make it to the floor. Those bills have been about things like whether we call our test standards basic or developing. That took many, many hours of taxpayer-funded time. We decided whether teachers should be allowed to use students' pronouns. We have discussed whether cursive should be mandatory. But proposals to do things like invest in school lunches for all and make them and reimburse school districts so that families can spend less on groceries and every single child can be fed at school. That was proposed in January, has not even been given a hearing yet. So the agenda setting by the majority party is one of the main reasons that so little good stuff gets done in the Capitol. If I could shine a light on that for the community, it's not great news, but it is true.
And I would take it a step further and seize on what you said there about some good bills like school lunches for all kids not even getting a hearing. And so when we talk about a group that still is maintaining the illusion of all-encompassing power, it's one that looks at a bill like that, and they could say, well, let's give this thing a hearing right away. Let's we don't want to pass it. We think, kids getting school lunches is welfare or whatever their position is. But the fact that they won't even give a bill like that a hearing kind of gives away the game and of where they want to keep 100% of their focus, which appears to be on all of these, culture war issues and things like that, rather than anything substantive. But I'll try to be fair here. As you've looked through the budget process, as you looked at what Governor Evers proposed for education, what you would like to see versus what the Republicans have done in the Joint Finance Committee, have you been encouraged by anything that you've seen there so far as the budget starts to become put together by Republicans?
I'm so glad you asked that, Pat, because it is a perfectly fair question, and I wish I had a better answer. It's perfectly logical to say, maybe a lot of the important public education issues belong in the budget. So maybe we don't need to talk about standalone bills until after the budget process is over. So the governor proposed the budget bill, and then Wisconsinites were invited to 4 public hearings at the committee, the Joint Finance Committee, to voice where they stand on that budget bill that the governor had proposed. He had proposed doubling the state's commitment to special ed funding, which is way, way, way below where it needs to be right now, and even further below what they fund private schools at. He proposed increases to per pupil aid. He proposed things like the Healthy Meals, Healthy Kids program, teacher apprenticeship and grow your own programs to address the teacher shortage, and peer-to-peer suicide prevention grants in schools. Really important stuff that got overwhelming support at those public hearings before the Joint Finance Committee. Everything I just listed was taken out all at once by the Republicans on that committee after hearing from Wisconsinites in their first executive session on the budget, where they removed 612 items from the governor's budget bill. So at this rate, the bill that they give us as the legislature out of that committee to vote on, the biennial state budget, will not look anything like the budget that the governor proposed. And on education issues, it zeroed out almost every popular proposal that Wisconsinites overwhelmingly said that they actually wanted to see in there.
Which actually presents both an opportunity and a challenge for Democrats who can either shrug their shoulders and, the voters just get the impression of, well, what are you going to do? They threw it out. That's what they do. They're in the majority, as opposed to now they're on record saying these are good ideas and we don't like them. And so, we Democrats are going to say to those Republicans, these are good ideas and so forth and so on. So, you've got, even in the setback of having these things thrown out, it seems like you have a messaging opportunity going forward.
Yeah, I think it's really bold for the Republican members of the Joint Finance Committee to do this again. They've done it to the last few budgets Governor Evers put forward, but at that time they had manufactured a 2/3 majority in the legislature. But now they have colleagues like me and many others, 23 new Democrats in the Assembly alone, who represent competitive districts. They themselves represent competitive districts, many of them who didn't before. And, in my case, I represent a lot of rural residents of Western Wisconsin who don't have a private school around. They're not interested in spending their taxpayer funds on private education. Their public schools have had to go to referendum just to stay open. In many cases, the public school district is the largest employer in these communities, and they have a representative who's going to tell them the truth about what's happening in the Capitol and why their public schools are struggling. Republicans haven't really had to face that in recent sessions, so it's awfully bold and dangerous politically for their future to continue to take out popular and much needed proposals from the budget without further consideration after hearing from people, because now they have colleagues who are going to hold them accountable for it. And frankly, nobody has asked me or anybody else to sit back and use only a fraction of our power here. I think if there's one thing that's clear after the 2024 election and 2025 state of politics at local, state, and federal levels, people want their elected officials to use as much power as they can muster to fight for them. And so, I'm a first-term member. I'm not on the Joint Finance Committee. I'm not the governor. There's a limit to how much power I have, but whatever I have, and however many loud microphones I can find to sort of speak the truth into, I'm going to use it because that's what people are asking us to do.
Well, and that's what we appreciate having you here on our homeroom segment and, throughout the course of your work to help people understand it's not just what's in the final budget bill, but all of this, if you want to call it sausage making, that's fine. But it is important to know that there were some good, healthy ingredients that were set to go into the sausage, and we're getting a whole lot of filler and garbage instead. State Representative Christian Phelps is a member of the Assembly Education Committee and is a first-term Democratic state rep from Eau Claire. Christian, good to talk to you as always. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah, great to talk to you too. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Take care. Hey, we've got daytime baseball across the Civic Media Radio Network today. It'll be the Brewers versus the Orioles going for the sweep in that series and looking for their first 4-game winning streak in I don't know how long, but coverage begins at 11:35 on stations in Richland Center, Oshkosh, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Hayward. Coming up in our 8 o'clock hour, we will be talking to Devin Remiker, one of the candidates for State Democratic Party chair. We'll talk to Joe Zepecki tomorrow and William Garcia coming up on Friday. Melissa Baldoff in our next hour as well. Remember, you can follow my team at upnorthnewswi.com and, of course, mornings here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Milwaukee Brewers were losers in extra innings to the Baltimore Orioles. They still took 2 out of 3, and now they head to Pittsburgh for a 4-game series. That starts tonight. Pre-game coverage at 5:05 on Civic Media stations in Richland Center, Oshkosh, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Hayward. Head to civicmedia.us for more. Again, 5:05 for pre-game. Brewers against the Pirates tonight, and again, 5:05 tomorrow. The bond markets are looking with some unease over the implication for the national debt under legislation that passed the House of Representatives after a debate that stretched into the wee smalls today. And in the House on the narrowest of margins, the final vote was 215 to 214 to approve legislation that would steer much more money away from the middle class, away from Medicaid, food assistance, education, clean energy, and run it toward tax cuts. And bond markets looking at the way that this bill would push up the national debt and budget deficits are not really fond of it, looking for a little bit more fiscal discipline. Let's talk to Sean O'Malley, a financial compliance and economics expert, with us now. Sean, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Pat. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm guessing you didn't stay up all night to watch the entire debate on the House floor.
No, I think a lot of the points that were going to be made are things that we've all heard before. And that's part of the uneasiness that you were talking about in the bond market, is that we're seeing the fact that the U.S. is having problems actually agreeing on a budget and getting a budget passed, and has a rather long history of doing so, is part of what's sort of feeding into the problems that we're seeing now.
Well, and it's led the major credit rating agencies to reduce their ratings on U.S. government debt. What was that about?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's a great lead-in. Thank you. So, because there have been problems passing a government budget in the U.S., there have been downgrades from all of the three major credit rating agencies. For those of you listening who don't necessarily know what the credit rating agencies are, tough to say it sometimes, they are basically entities that will evaluate the financial risk and creditworthiness of any particular entity. It can be a government, it can be a corporation, it can even be a municipality. And for the U.S. government, we've seen the credit ratings, which historically have been AAA for the vast majority of the 20th century, have now started to take a hit. So the first hit was when Standard & Poor's, or S&P, downgraded U.S. debt from AAA to AA plus back in 2011, largely because of the budgetary holdup assigned to what was then the Tea Party Republicans. And then in 2023, Fitch also joined S&P, downgrading the U.S. debt from AAA to AA plus, again, largely due to MAGA Republicans. And now, just recently, we've seen Moody's, the third of the three big credit rating agencies, downgrade U.S. debt from AAA to AA1. They have a slightly different schema for their credit ratings. But anyway, it's basically a downgrade now across the board. So there is no major credit rating agency that rates U.S. government debt AAA.
And even if there were concern, and there is, about government debt as a percentage of gross domestic product, the fact that there's not even the illusion that this new bill with its massive spending is being done for fiscal discipline reasons. This is all going toward tax cuts, predominantly, focused on the highest tax brackets, where, again, the markets see no fiscal discipline here. It's spending cuts without the savings.
Correct. And I think what you have to do in this case is we have to look at not what the rhetoric is, not what people are saying, or even economists are saying. Look at what the markets are doing. Actions always speak louder than words. And what we're seeing is that something that we've actually talked about on your show a couple of weeks ago, this whole idea of, people losing faith in the United States because of actions that are sometimes politically motivated. We're seeing a lot of things. We're having issues with our two nearest neighbors and closest trading partners. We're increasing tariffs across the board without any necessarily, economic need or strategic purpose behind it. And now we can't pass our own budget. And if we do pass the budget, as you point out, the upper income is going to benefit greatly at the expense of the middle class and the lower income folks. So what we're seeing is the investors are voting with their feet. And there is this new thing called Sell America. And that's what that's the phrase that they're putting behind it when investors basically avoid bonds as well as stocks. And what happened yesterday is there was a 20-year Treasury note auction that yields gapped out significantly because there was reduced demand, lackluster demand for these bonds, because people don't want to buy American assets. They don't feel confident in basically the economic future of the United States right now. And by adding this budgetary deficit and increasing the debt basically on a rate of about $1 trillion every 3 months, it's not going to make it better. It's going to make it worse.
Yeah, and again, it's not so much about the economic fundamentals of the country as it is the politics, the decisions by policymakers that are causing so much uncertainty, even with tariffs, which we won't have time to update today. But, there's still the uncertainty, even with the recent drop in tariffs from China. But I have a pretty good feeling when we talk next week, these will still be relevant issues to discuss. Sean O'Malley follows it as a financial compliance and economics expert, Hudson native. Always great to talk to you, Sean. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you, check in a little later.
Very good. Thanks very much, Pat.
You
Take
bet.
care.
All right. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, too, by the way. And coming up, we are going to be talking to Joe Zepecki. He has been here regularly to talk about things that are in the news, but now he's also wearing the hat of running for chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. We talked to Devin Remacher yesterday, William Garcia tomorrow. Joe Zepecki is up next. Remember, sign up for our newsletters, plural. Head to that homepage, upnorthnewswi.com. Live from Lake Wissota. What a great place to spend part of your mornings on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
You make me wanna shout, kick my heels up and shout, throw my hands up and shout, throw my head back and shout, come on now.
Welcome to today's history lesson for this May 21st, 2025, where we are joined, as always, by Melissa Kaye from 97.5 WFHR and 105.5 WIRI in Wisconsin Rapids. How is Melissa today?
I am excellent. How are you?
Great. You've all recovered from the wonderful play that you were working on, directing, and
Yeah. Oh, it was so much fun.
that's awesome.
I'm so proud of my cast and crew. They did awesome.
Do you have a next project in mind already?
I'm getting a pigeon.
What? Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Again, if I had like unlimited sound effects in front of me, this one would have been like the brakes being slammed on or the needle being dragged across the record, and say, "What?"
I'm getting a pigeon a play that you're directing?
Is it like Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus? Is it like a play on that?
I'm going to buy a dog kennel to keep it in, and I'm going to build some stuff because I just got a skill saw, and I'm going to beat up my maintenance guy to put in electric in my shed, so I don't have to run an extension cord out my window and over there.
I really feel like I should apologize to the listeners that you're going to have to look online for today's history lesson because I really want to explore this more.
Do you know how many awards pigeons won during World War II?
200.
32.
Oh, I was way off.
She's you online. Yes, Pigeon Mama for the win.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Apparently you are not
Pigeons are
alone
awesome.
here.
They actually make really great pets. I'm excited.
I am befuddled. This is really... I did not see this coming at all. Not it.
You
your
asked. I
your
told you.
excitement
It's true.
is palpable.
She's right. You did ask.
I know, and I'm loving it. This is great. Ronald Isley is 84 years old today from the Isley Brothers. The American Red Cross was established by Clara Barton on this day in 1881. Happy birthday to singer Leo Sayer. He is 77 years old today. Could it scream 70s any more than this? The pre-disco 70s?
Sorry, your lapels are poking me in the shoulder right now.
Leo Sayer gave us You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, Long Tall Glasses, When I Need You, More Than I Can Say. He also wrote The Show Must Go On, which was covered by Three Dog Night. Happy birthday to Bill Champlin, who is 78 years old today, former member of Chicago.
Slow skate, everyone.
Oh, my goodness.
Slow skate.
If you ever wanted a musical transition from 70s to 80s, that was it right there.
This keyboard sound is every 80s show.
Yes. Let's see. Former Senator Al Franken is 74 years old today. Mr. T is 73 years old today. Go ahead and give it to us, Melissa. Give us the line.
I don't know it.
Mr. T?
I pity the foo.
I pity the fool.
I pity the fool.
There it is.
Okay,
Thank
that was
you.
good. Yeah. Dorsey Levens, former Packers running back and the leading rusher from Super Bowl 31. He is 55 years old today. Brooklyn's Christopher George Wallace, a.k.a. Biggie Smalls, or the notorious B.I.G. He was born this day in 1972, was murdered in March of 1997. On this day in 1983, I've actually got two notes here from this day in 1983. ZZ Top released a video for this song. And I'll just tell you now, rather than waiting for the singing, because I know you're imagining it. If you know anything about ZZ Top videos, this video for Gimme All Your Lovin' marked the first appearance of the Eliminator, Billy Gibbons' 1933 Ford Hot Rod, that would appear in multiple other ZZ Top videos and become associated with the band.
ZZ Top's so good.
Yes. It's just
every record, even their 80s stuff, people can be like, oh, 80s bands are terrible when they were in the 70s and like they get like more processed and whatnot, but they just stayed a great rock and roll band.
Mm-hmm. That was this day in 1983, and the number one song that day was by David Bowie.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. Okay. We're just
We're not pausing on ZZ Top.
That, of course, would be Let's Dance, which hit number one on this date 42 years ago.
Oh, God. Oh.
Wow.
Oh.
I know. On this day 43 years ago, on this day in 1992, after 30 seasons, Johnny Carson hosted his second to last episode, and the last one featuring guests. The guests were Robin Williams and Bette Midler. The one where Bette Midler infamously sang One for My Baby
God.
and One for the Road. You remember watching? I'm sure you watched and thought, "Is this really it? After all these years, no more Johnny Carson on late night TV?" It was a big deal.
I think it was like
then.
the first, because I was really too young for the last episode of MASH.
Yeah.
And I think it was like really the first thing where like a big TV event, like, oh, this is like it's a big ending. And I remember him crying, like wiping away tears while she was singing.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
It was great TV history, but it has been since that time we've had Letterman and Leno, and now we've got Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and soon to be joined by Melissa Kaye with Pigeon Talk. All of it, where we're going to learn more about the dog kennel and everything else that you're doing to become a pigeon mama.
Yeah,
I am okay.
I'm excited. I even got permission from my landlords. They wear pigeon pants. Do you know this? This is why she said I could get them, because they need time outside their cage every day, and they wear something called pigeon pants, which are like a diaper for a bird, and they're super cute. They're so adorable. They got like little suspenders.
I've got no words right now, none.
I know. This is just so great, Tony. This is how I felt when the Pat Kreitlow show ended and the host went to Europe. No more Pat in the morning, but then you came back and it was all so good. See, that's what happens when you got Melissa here. This is also World Meditation Day, National Waitstaff Day, and Talk Like Yoda Day, marking the 1980 anniversary of the release of Star Wars V, The Empire Strikes Back, 45
Pigeon
years ago today. Pigeon I will get.
Pants they will wear.
Break we will take.
Melissa Kaye, you are the best. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later on. We are going to be visiting with Earl Ingram coming up, and so much more ahead on these mornings, live from Lake Wissota across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.